Ballots, those were signature verified, those were processed, those were sent forward to tabulation, and those were included in the results. Many were included in the initial results. We are now, from yesterday's Election Day operations, shifting back to that early ballot processing. And so what we have already done is we received approximately 86,000 early ballots on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday before Election Day Tuesday. Now, what my team did is we do what we always do with early ballots, is that we scan that barcode that links to a registered voter. We make sure that that's a valid registered voter. We make sure that voter hasn't cast a ballot previously, and then we capture an image of that signature affidavit. Then we load that into our database and we review the signature. Once the signature is matched, we send it forward to a bipartisan ballot processing team. What that team is that team sits over there. It's a bipartisan team, different parties sitting across from each other, taking those ballots out of the green affidavit envelopes, making sure that the ballot isn't damaged, making sure that it's not torn, making sure that it doesn't have red ink on it, making sure that it doesn't have coffee on it, anything that would inhibit it from being tabulated. So as I mentioned, we've already processed those, and that was about 86,000. We've sent those ahead to the board for tabulation. Now, we also received approximately 50,000 early ballots on Monday. So those were dropped off and received on Monday. Those ballots are currently undergoing processing. So again, they've already undergone that signature review process. They've been signature verified. They've gone through that audit queue, and now they're with the bipartisan team. We will have those done today, and then they will be moved forward to, again, the board for tabulation. Finally, and this is the big number that is bigger than ever before, we received approximately 275,000 early ballots dropped off yesterday on Election Day. So that is what we were doing late last night. My team and I, if you saw us in the warehouse, we were receiving back those early ballots that are returned from the voting locations after the voting locations are closed. We're then sorting those. We're then processing those, we're sending them in, we're image capturing that signature, and what we will be doing today and tomorrow and the next day is we will be reviewing the signatures of all of those 275,000. Once they go through signature verification, once they are deemed good signature, once they go through an audit queue, then they can be sent ahead to the board for tabulation. This number is immense. And it's a conversation that probably Arizona needs to have in terms of public policy, because this is a number that keeps on growing. It's in many ways it's wonderful. Arizonans appreciate the ease of the voting process, in that you can just take your early ballot and drop it off on Election Day, but it does inhibit us from having a higher percentage of returns available within the first 24, 48 hours. But it is important that we do signature verify all of those, because it is how we confirm your identity. In the November 2020 election, which of course I was not here for, but I can still pull statistics from, there were about 170,000 early ballots that were dropped off on Election Day, November 3rd, 2020. So obviously, in just the span of 2 years, despite my best efforts, over 100,000 additional people returned ballots just by dropping off an early ballot on Election Day. So that is what is going on in the world of early voting, and I'm now going to turn it over to Bill for tabulation.
All right, thank you, Stephen. Appreciate all your work and your team's hard work. Thanks to everybody for being here again today. We understand that the people of Arizona are very anxious to get the results, but again, pursuant to state law, as Stephen just talked about, it's going to take a while. And again, today we're asking for their patience, but we also want to give people a good idea of what is happening and what will be happening in the days ahead. So roughly about 1.1, almost 1.2 million votes that have already been reported. So that's what people are aware of when they go on the website. Take a look at that. That is what has been reported so far. But we've got, as Stephen just mentioned, over, and we don't know the exact numbers, but over about 400,000 votes yet to be counted and reported. And that's going to be taking place, and those are mainly, as Stephen mentioned, these are mainly the early votes that have been dropped off since Friday, including yesterday's very large number of at least 275,000. So again, that process is going to go on the recorder's side of the house, and when they have gone through that full verification process, then they will be turned over here to be tabulated. And that's going to be taking place over the next few days. I just want to speak for a moment about day of election day activities. So we had approximately 250,000 voters who checked in to vote in person yesterday. And the lion's share of those numbers have already been reported. They were reported last night into the wee hours of the morning, and we want to say a huge thanks to the team back there for all that they did, everyone out in those vote centers, the poll workers, in getting all of those figures in. Of course, you all learned about the Box 3 yesterday. And again, just to be clear on what Box 3 is, these are the ballots, in-person ballots yesterday that were not read into the tabulator. We have approximately 17,000 of those ballots that were in Box 3. So we want to set expectations on that. First thing is the team here now is going through the quality assurance on those ballots, making sure that we don't have any double counts, making sure we know exactly what we're looking at here. Okay? But to talk about the full number of in-person ballots yesterday, we have about 7% of the total of in-person ballots yesterday that went into Box 3. So that 17,000 ballots is about 7%. We always have ballots that go into Box 3. We always have ballots that are not read into the tabulator, but that is a higher percentage than normal. But again, we're only talking about 7% of those ballots from yesterday. So those will go through the quality assurance check, and those will be tabulated throughout the week. I don't have exact times, dates, when that's going to happen, but we'll be going through that process during the week. And so now let me talk about reporting that's going to take place. So we will be reporting updates on new numbers every evening. The plan is that we'll be doing it one time a day in the evening. And when we do that, we'll provide the updated totals, and we'll tell you the amount of votes that are being reported at that time, including the breakdown on whether those are early ballots or whether they are ballots out of that Box 3, whether they are additional day of ballots. So we want to make sure that people understand that. This group here is going to tabulate ballots every day. As they get processed, we will be tabulating. So we have Veterans Day coming up, a holiday. They will continue to tabulate on that day. We've got the weekend coming up. We will continue to tabulate. But as I have been saying, we have anticipated that we would have 95 to 99% of all the ballots counted and reported by Friday. We have no reason to change that estimate. If we do, we'll let you know. But again, that is still where we anticipate being as we move forward that. So, and one other thing I did want to note is the provisionals. So we had 7,000 provisionals yesterday. Those are in-person folks that were asked to vote a provisional vote. There are a variety of reasons why they would do that, including maybe they didn't have their ID or other reasons, or maybe it showed when they checked in, showed that they had already voted, maybe they had voted early, but we had 7,000. Those 7,000 provisionals are actually fewer than the number of provisionals we had in 2020. And in 2022, we actually had more people voting in person day of than we did in 2020. So again, those numbers are excellent, very low numbers in provisionals compared to historic numbers. So with that, we'll be happy to open it up for any questions that you might have for Stephen and I.
Sarah?
I'm not sure who to ask this to. I'm hoping to get a little bit more granular if we can. Can you give us a sense of like how many ballots were Braille, how many provisionals, and how many like overseas ballots? I know that's a lot, but can you give us a little bit of a breakdown of whatever you have?
Absolutely. So in the early ballot universe, the overwhelming majority will be normal early ballots. Braille ballots typically only make up a few hundred out of every election. UOCAVA ballots only a few thousand. So when we talk about 275,000 plus early ballots being dropped off on election day, the overwhelming majority are going to be typical early ballots. And I should say, on the early ballot topic, another thing that we will be doing, and Bill mentioned Veterans Day, and this is how this came to mind, is we will be curing signatures. So if we originally deem your signature to not be matching, and then we send it to a manager, and the manager also says that does not seem to match. You have 5 business days, so not including Veterans Day, in which to cure that signature. We will also be attempting to contact you in any way possible, in the evening by phone, in the day by phone, by text message, by email, by letter. But if you are proactive, then you can go on to beballotready.vote, and you can make sure that your early ballot was tabulated. Now, if you were an in-person voter with the board, then of course you would just see it as you feed your ballot into the tabulation machine.
Stephen, I have... Hang on a second. Let's start over here. We'll come across.
Hi, Chris Mankey from CBS News. Just two things. One was a quick detail question. You said 50,000 some kind of votes were being tabulated today?
So, 86,000 early ballots were processed by my team and were handed over to tabulation, and I believe those are in tabulation right now. Additionally, we are processing the 50,000 early ballots that were returned to us on Monday, and we will have those transferred over to the tabulation team by the end of today, such that then they can move forward with their tabulation process.
And this, yeah, that's separate. That's part of the 400,000 you were talking about.
Correct. So when Bill's talking about 400,000, the lion's share of those are going to be mine, but those early ballots, which is going to be the 86,000 approximately from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, already going on in there. The 40,000 from Monday, already being processed, and then the 275,000 dropped off yesterday, which we are now signature verifying because we scanned those in 4 or 5 a.m. last night.
And it's 50,000 from Monday.
From Monday, approximately.
And
Yes, sir.
my other question was, and this could go to both of you. Already last night we heard people at the Republican Watch Party calling the Maricopa County election criminal, calling it rigged, incompetent, and corrupt. How do you respond to that?
Certainly not. Early ballot processing went very well. We had very few issues. We responded to issues throughout the early ballot processing on average in less than 30 minutes. I think our voter registration database was cleaner than it's ever been. I'm proud of the work that we've done on that. In terms of issues reported over that 26-day period, it was remarkably low compared with previous years. And I'll let you, Bill, speak to that.
So first of all, I just want to clear up, again, we do not have a number at this point that we anticipate we will report today. So we're not sitting here saying we're gonna report 50,000. We will see how many we have. We will tabulate and report as many as we have completed, obviously following all the necessary processes. And I'll speak directly to the issue of in-person again. I apologized yesterday. I will do it again today. What happened yesterday, we cannot have a repeat of. We are already looking very closely at what happened. Obviously, our team was able to come up with a fix yesterday for what happened, so that allowed those vote centers to get back online. But again, we are going to do a deep dive on this. This board will get to the bottom of exactly what happened, and we will do what needs to be done. The board has demonstrated that in the past when we have had issues, and we'll do that again. That relates, I think, to the word incompetence. Again, there is no perfect election. Yesterday was not a perfect election, but again, we will learn from it and do better. I would say again, this team, our techs and our poll workers, worked quickly to get these issues fixed. With regard to comments like criminal or rigged, there is absolutely no basis for that statement. We made a commitment at the beginning of this year to make this the most transparent election in the history of Maricopa County. I think both the Recorder's Office and the board have stood behind that. When they say criminal, I don't know what they're talking about. 2020, again, as I say often, one of the most scrutinized elections in the history of the world here in Maricopa County. I'd say this one is getting pretty scrutinized too. We welcome the scrutiny. If there are fraud issues, the county attorney's office was on the phone with lawyers for the Republican Party and the Democratic Party all day long. There was a lawsuit that was filed in Maricopa County Superior Court. I didn't follow the entire hearing, but I don't think the word criminal came out of the mouth of the lawyers for Blake Masters' campaign, for the Arizona Republican Party, the RNC, rigged. I do not believe that was what came out of their mouths. So again, if they have allegations, we will take a look at it. But otherwise, I absolutely reject those statements. They're without basis. And the elections workers, the poll workers who dealt with a very difficult situation do not deserve to hear those words, to have those sorts of words thrown at them. And this board is going to stand behind what happened yesterday, figure out what happened, get to the bottom of it, make those changes that need to be made.
Please.
Yeah, hello, my name is Romain Fonserrive. I work for the International News Agency AFP. Based on the first elements of what you have, can you maybe explain a little bit more about what happened yesterday? And also, we know that these issues caused lines to form in front of polling stations. So do we have a final number of how many polling stations were actually affected by technical issues? And then maybe a quick question, and I have to apologize because I'm French, so I'm no
You're doing great.
American specialist about the elections, but you said there were 275,000 early ballots on election day, but 250,000 voters checked in to vote. Can you explain to me the discrepancy?
Yeah. Let me address I can address that and then talk about what happened on the day. So again, it is an interesting system that we have, and that's why Recorder Richard talked about. This is something that the policymakers want to look at. So we have two types of voters yesterday. We had voters who showed up in person to take a ballot, vote it, and feed it into a tabulator. And for those who were not able to run that through the tabulator, they put that in this, what we call box 3, that we discussed earlier. So that was around a little bit over 250,000 people. In addition, we also had people who received a early ballot. That was what Recorder Rich was talking about. As opposed to going in and feeding a ballot through the tabulator, they actually brought in that ballot that they already received in an envelope and just dropped it off and then walked away. So those are those two universes. Again, as we discussed yesterday, the issue was that we had so again, we had 223 vote centers yesterday. At the high point, we had in the 60s, around 67 vote centers that had 1 or 2 tabulators that were having intermittent problems with reading the ballots, and so that was sort of the high point. In the early afternoon, our techs and our poll workers were able to determine and identify an issue which dealt with the printer and the fact that the timing marks were not being printed on the ballot as dark enough to be read by the tabulator. Once that issue was identified, then over the next few hours, those vote centers came back fully operational with both of the tabulators working. There were lines yesterday. There were a lot of people. I just said this. Let me underline this point. 2020 was a presidential election with very high voter turnout. Okay? Yesterday, midterm election with obviously a lower voter turnout. That's what we do in our country, right? Presidential elections always have higher turnout. But even though it had lower turnout, we had a higher turnout in person yesterday than we had in 2020. So, as a result of that, there were a lot of people voting, and we told people there may be lines. There were lines that developed. In Maricopa County, folks had this hybrid approach, so they can vote by mail, they can vote early in person before Election Day, or they can vote in person on Election Day. So that was part of why we had lines. We had a lot of people. But certainly the issues with the tabulators did lead to longer lines. But there were many of, 80% of the vote centers did not have these issues at all. Many of the vote centers had no lines or very short lines. And we have spent the past few weeks talking about that there were going to be these 223 vote centers. People should look at the various options of different vote centers to go to. And in fact, we even had information on locations.maricopa.vote about what the wait times were in those different locations.
And what was the total number of in-person voting yesterday? Sorry.
Total number was about 250,000. 230,000? Okay, 230,000. Yes.
Do you expect any more litigation from GOP officials?
There could be. Again, this is sort of the way of the world in elections, especially close elections. So again, we have said from the beginning, we've said with respect to 2020, if people want to pursue actions in court, we welcome that, and we will address those. We will defend and address the issues that are raised by the court and by the litigants.
So many reasons I'm a journalist. Could you just give me the full number? So 200 and, I've already forgotten, in person, and then total number of votes with mail-in?
Yeah, absolutely. So we had 230,000 in-person votes yesterday. We have had about just under 1.2 million total that have been reported, and we're anticipating a little bit, somewhat over 400,000 more to be reported in the coming days.
Of the 17,000 ballots that were put in box 3, are those able to be read on the machines here? Do they have to be duplicated? Are they going to have to be hand counted?
And that's where I talked about, we're going through the quality assurance on that right now. So we will be able to, we'll review those and determine what exactly needs to be done with those.
Okay, so that's not known right now.
That's not known at this point.
One other question. Who would you say is responsible for the issues that happened yesterday?
Well, again, we're a team here at Maricopa County. We all work together on these issues, and again, yesterday was in-person voting. That does fall within the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, but the focus yesterday was determining what the issue was and to address it. That's what we did, and again, we're going to do a deep dive on exactly what happened. We know it had to do with the printers, and we will get to the bottom of it. This board is committed to doing that.
I ask this because there's one particular candidate that has already expressed an eagerness to declare victory here. And so the question is, when, I understand you guys are working through the tabulation process here, but when could we expect, would it be tomorrow night, to see the Tuesday early ballots that were dropped off in person? Can we expect to see at least a certain amount of that batch appear tomorrow?
So I will tell you from the component that I'm responsible for, which is scanning those in, signature verifying. We've already scanned them in. We did that between 4 and 8 a.m. We are doing the signature verification. As soon as we do the signature verification, they will go to that ballot processing. They will get to the tabulation crew tomorrow. Whether or not they are able to load all those up, I won't speak for the tabulation team, but we will have them, many tens of thousands of those signature verified by the end of today.
By the end of today?
Today, and then
Those Tuesday ballots?
Exactly, but then they will be sent to the tabulation team tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yes.
And are we looking at 7 p.m.? Is that kind of our target for announcing time?
Yeah, we haven't set that time, but it will be in the evening, and we'll let you guys know.
Any other questions? All right, if you have anything technical or something you want us to follow up on, a number that you didn't quite understand, and how a lot of this stuff is still being counted, verified, and we talked a lot about the 17,000 ballots that went into box number 3. Those are going through a process. I believe Scott Jarrett did tell us that, or he believes that we have no reason to believe that these will not be counted by the central count tabulators. These are different kinds of machines that work in a different way, and we expect they'll be tabulated in that way. But they'll keep working through that process, and we'll give you guys updates as quickly as we can. Okay. But if you have something technical, please reach out to myself or Matt or another member of the team that's around here. Okay. And what?